Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy. And today's video is going to be somewhat of a follow-up to a video that I produced in the past named Why So Many Marys. Now that video itself was a follow-up to a video I did called The Three Marys, and I don't know if both of those videos are still up online, but if they are, I'll leave a link somewhere to those videos, or at least to the one that may still be there. In any case, rather than tell you to go watch that so that I can give you the 3 minutes worth of information that are different, I'm going to go ahead and give you a general rundown of the whole thing from start to finish so you don't have to do that. However, this is an unscripted video. I'm not going to be blurting out scriptures. I'm not going to go back and edit in text. So if you get to where you really need to go look this up for yourself, you may have to go back to that older video to get where these scriptures are coming from. Okay, in any case, the word Mary is closely related to the name Mary. M-A-R-Y is Mary the person. M-A-R-R-Y is Mary the act of getting hooked up. And if we go back, we can see a direct connection between the word Mary that we use today and the word Maria that was in the original languages of the previous Bible. And then the word Miriam that was in the original Hebrew. That word Miriam has the same meaning as the word Maria, which also has the same meaning as the word Mary. Those three names. And that meaning is the cause of their rebellion. The first person to be named Mary in the Bible is Miriam. Miriam was the sister of Moses. Her and Aaron conspired together to overthrow Moses and take control of the Israeli nation at the time, God's chosen people, the sons of Jacob. And so they were actually reenacting something that had happened previously, thousands of years earlier in the Garden of Eden between Eve and Satan, who overthrew or that usurped authority of God. Satan, the serpent, approaches Eve and says, "Is it true that you can't eat fruit?" And Eve says, "Well, we can eat fruit, we just can't eat this fruit over here, and because we'll die." And Satan says, "You're not going to die, you're going to be like God. If you eat the fruit, you're going to be basically declaring that you yourself know right from wrong, and you don't have to worry about His rules of right and wrong." Now, God's rules are what we call natural law. Anything outside of natural law is an unnatural law. Well, when any two people agree to enter into an unnatural law, that's called a covenant, a two-way legally binding agreement. Eve entered into a two-way legally binding agreement to worship Satan as a god as opposed to the Creator. And that could be a two-way thing, that in some way Eve herself would get some form of worship from Satan, because remember, he's promising her that she can be a god, or be like God. So apparently, when they entered into this contract, Satan himself became like a god, Eve became like a god, and we all know the rest of the story. Well, in that original story, Eve is called Heve, which gets transliterated into Eve in our English Bibles. Heve means egg. It's kind of like the Spanish word huevos, or our English word ovary, because Eve was to become the mother of everyone alive on the earth. So calling her egg made sense. Satan himself, at the time it's called serpent. We know that the serpent is Satan because when you get into the book of Revelation, it very clearly says that the original serpent, the original dragon, was Satan. And so Satan and Eve entered into this contract. Well, there's another word that could be considered Eve's name, and that is Aisha. You will not find what I'm about to tell you in any Bible textbook or any kind of reference material based on the Bible. But the word Aisha means leader of the male tribal leader. So, you know, we think that the Bible is all about oppressing women. The Bible is about men and women oppressing one another. The man, the word that is represented as man, is Aish. The word that ends up translated a lot of times as woman is Aisha. But the reality is those words cannot simply mean man and woman, because a lot of verses in the Bible don't make sense when you do that. So the Aish is the male tribal leader. Aisha is the leader of the male tribal leader. Another word that ends up getting translated as man and woman, or as man, is Baal. But sometimes Baal is translated as husband. And we know in English that a man and a husband are not necessarily the same thing. But the word Aish is often translated as husband. So something's going on here that is not quite accurate, but it's not impossible to figure out. And like I said, if you're really interested in seeing this for yourself in your own copy of the Bible, you can go back and look at the video that I just spoke about, the how many Marys, or why so many Marys. The word Baal, most of us understand, is the name of a god, a false god. Well, that's not true, because a lot of times in the Bible, the word Baal appears in a plural form, meaning the Baals, which means not this that it's a proper name of a single false god, but it is a kind of god. El means God. Baal means God by agreement. So once again, this is a God by contract, God by covenant. Satan became a Baal to Eve, God by contract. And so Aish, if you can keep it separate, that Aish means male tribal leader, and Baal means God by contract, the rest of the Bible's going to make a lot more sense. Now, you're not going to see this distinction as you're reading, because a lot of places Baal is translated a lot of different ways. A lot of places Aish is translated a lot of different ways. But we know, if you go back and look at every single place where these words appear, they cannot mean husband in every place. They cannot mean male tribe, or they cannot mean husband in every place. But Aish can mean male tribal leader in every place, and Baal can mean God by contract in every place. In fact, there's a verse that says that no longer will you be calling me your husband, you'll be calling me your God, or something to that effect. What that really says there, it's God. He's talking to the Israelites. And he says, no longer will you be calling me Baal, your Baal, your God by contract, but you will be calling me your Aish, your male tribal leader. That makes so much more sense than anything that any of the translators of any English Bible have ever come up with. The thing about it is that a lot of times in the Bible, we see things play out over and over and over again. Same story, different characters. Well, the very first appearance of the word Mary in our Bible is actually left in its original transliterated form as Miriam. Miriam was the sister of Aaron and Moses. She and Aaron conspired to overthrow Moses, to take away Moses' authority. That story is very obviously similar to the act of Satan and Eve trying to overthrow God's authority. And so if we look at that story, we can get a better understanding of what happened in the Garden of Eden. Miriam, the Hebrew word Miriam, means the cause of their rebellion. Now, as time goes on, that word gets transliterated from the Hebrew into the Greek, from the Greek into the Latin, from the Latin to the English. And so there's a direct line from Miriam to Maria to our current Mary. There's also a direct line to our word Mary, which means to marry somebody. I've always said that there are no marriages mentioned in the Bible between humans until long after the flood. In fact, I believe the very first marriage, the first official marriage, was the wedding feast that Jesus went to when he entered into Jerusalem. But there were rules written about marriage, or a relationship between a man and a woman, in the law of Moses. And but prior to that, there was no command to ever enter into an agreement, a legally binding agreement, to have a single sex partner for life. That concept did not come up until very late in human history, unless we go back and look at the relationship between Eve and Satan. Now, when you get to Jesus' day, it's not very difficult to recognize that almost all of the women that Jesus knew were named Mary. His mom was named Mary. Now, he had others. I think his aunt was Elizabeth, and he had a friend with two sisters. One was named Martha, but then the other sister was named Mary. He had a girlfriend, or a female friend, that was always with him, named Mary Magdalene. And then there's even a mention of someone called the other Mary that doesn't seem to be any of those Marys. The reason for that is Jesus' life is retelling the story of the fall of man, but at the same time telling the story in advance of the restoration of mankind. Mary, the word Mary in our English language still means the same thing that Miriam meant back in the ancient past, the cause of their rebellion. So if we take the word Mary and we add the suffix, age, marriage, this is like, I don't know, homage. There's a lot of words that have a suffix age, and it just means that it's somehow related to the word. So when you add age to the word Mary, you end up getting not the cause of the rebellion, but more like the cause of the rebellion. So Eve may have caused the rebellion when she entered into a legal agreement with Satan, but it was the agreement between Eve and Satan that was the cause of the rebellion. Now, I'm not telling you to run out and get a divorce, because that would be like fulfillment of prophecy of the Antichrist. It says in no uncertain terms that as time goes on and we start to approach the end, the resurrection of the dead, that they will be commanding not to eat foods that God has approved, and they will be commanding not to marry, something that God allows. And sure enough, the Bible says that God allows marriage. So if I was to tell you can't get married, then I would be, doing the will of the Antichrist. Now, I'll tell you that getting married causes a lot of problems, but that's only because the Bible says that. The Bible very clearly says that human beings at Jesus' day had been given permission to get married, but Jesus himself, or Paul himself, said, if you get married, you are going to suffer. And in my experience, this is true. Most of the people that I know, even if they won't admit it, probably would have been better off if they'd have just moved in together. As time goes on, we'll see how that all works out. Currently, we are all given permission to eat meat. Some have chosen not to eat meat. We have all been given permission to enter into legally binding contracts with a sex partner, and many have chosen to do that. But many have chosen to just avoid any involvement with the government. But as time goes on, we'll see how this works out, and just keep in mind that the word Mary, not the name Mary, is based on the original act between the original Miriam, Mary, Eve, and Satan. The very first marriage ever recorded in the Bible was the two-way covenant agreement between Satan and Eve. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.